Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Munger, and I'm a librarian with Sacramento Public Library. Welcome to this month's genealogy workshop, 30 Records that Document Female Ancestors, with our speaker, Gena Philibert-Ortega. Today's session will be recorded and available on our YouTube channel indefinitely. I'll put the link to our YouTube channel in the chat. Again, for questions about future genealogy presentations or to receive a copy of the handout, please email contact@saclibrary.org. I'll also post a copy of the handout to the chat for download. Now, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Gena Philibert-Ortega. She is an author, researcher, and instructor whose focus is genealogy and social and women's history. She holds a master's degree in interdisciplinary studies, psychology and women's studies, and a master's degree in religion. Her published works include 2 books, numerous articles published in magazines and online, as well as 5 editions of the Tracing Your Ancestors series from Morsehead Publishing. She is the editor of the Utah Genealogical Association's magazine, Crossroads. Her writings can be found on her blogs, Gena's Genealogy and Food.Family.Ephemera, as well as on the GenealogyBank and Legacy Webinars blogs. She has presented to diverse groups worldwide, including the Legacy Family Tree webinar series. Her current research includes women's repatriation and citizenship in the 20th century, foodways and community in fundraising, cookbooks, and women's material culture. Her presentation today is 30 Records that Document Female Ancestors. Gena, I'll pass the virtual mic to you now.
All right. Thank you so much, Dave. Let me get this ready to go. Oh, I guess that's it. Okay. Let me do this. All right. Well, thank you everyone for taking some time out of your Saturday to join me. I appreciate it. And I see there's a few people I know, so that's always nice. We are going to talk about 30 records that document female ancestors. And some of these are going to be familiar records to you, while others might be new. Now, as we go through this, you might want to jot down some names of ancestors that you need some help with and get some ideas whether you've used these records or not. Hopefully, it'll give you some ideas about what you should be looking for next. All right, hold on. Okay, before we begin, I just want to say something because obviously taking a huge subject and narrowing it down to 30 records, you're going to miss stuff. So when we look at researching women's lives, we need to think about where is she living and what's the time period. That's going to tell you what records exist. So some of the records I'm going to talk about don't exist for that specific time and place that your ancestor was living in. So keep that in mind. And I'll talk a little bit about records and what their time period is as we go through. The other thing is we always want to exhaust the records for the place or places she lived in. Now, one way to do this, whether you're using Family Search or Ancestry, is to go through the catalog for the place she's living in, the state, the county, the city. So that's 3 different searches, and look at every record there is and whether it matches the time period she's there. That's going to help you, because there's tons of records out there that you don't know exist because it has to do with the time and place. All right. Now, we are going to explore different time periods of women's lives. And so let's start with childhood first. And we want to pay special attention to records that would have documented her childhood as well as the childhood of her children. Okay. And then we want to pay special attention to any records that are tied to a school or to a church. So keep that in mind as we talk about some of these records. So number 1 on my list is the Family Bible. Now, the Family Bible is important, but it's elusive. It's important because prior to vital record registration, most white Protestants used family Bibles to annotate information about their families' lives. Now, the bad part of family Bibles is, well, we didn't all inherit them, right? But there are places you can find family Bibles. Now, this one is one from my own family, and you can see it has names, it has birth dates. We could do a whole talk about some of the issues with this family Bible. But the benefit of family Bibles is they do provide names and dates, and that's something Vital Records also give to us. Now, if you didn't inherit the family Bible, that's totally okay. There are some places to look. So, for example, go to Cindy's list, and she has a category called Family Bibles. So you can go through there and see what online repositories have family Bibles to search. So there's all kinds of different places to look here. Now, the problem with family Bibles is they could be almost anywhere. So it does take some time to search. It's not just putting a name in a database and finding it. There are some repositories that collect family Bibles. One is DAR, the Daughters of the American Revolution. And so you can go to their website. They do have family Bibles that they've collected. The other place that has a large collection of family Bibles is American Ancestors, which is the website for the New England Historic and Genealogy Society. So you could also look there. Now, that is a membership organization, American Ancestors, and that membership gives you access to their databases. But usually you can do a search and at least see if there's any hits, and then you can decide whether you want to subscribe or not, or become a member or not. Some libraries actually do have the website and a membership to the website as well. Okay, so number 2 is birth certificates. And this is something we always think of when we think of proving birth or proving lineage, kids to their parents. So birth certificates are another tricky proposition because what happens is they weren't always recorded throughout time in the United States. The first birth registrations we see are in Massachusetts in the late 1600s. But if you look at California, we don't start recording births or deaths until after the 20th century. So you're not always going to find a birth record. But if you have her birth record or her children's birth records, that can give you information because her children's birth records are going to give her name, including her maiden name. This should be somewhat accurate because either she or her husband or the father hopefully gave that information. That doesn't mean it's 100% accurate, but it does mean that perhaps that would give you some good information. Now, birth certificates for the children are also going to give the mother's maiden name as well as her occupation and her birthplace. So whenever we research, we always start with the latest events and go backwards in time. So if she has children, do some research on the children and see what that helps you with. I should also mention, if you look at this one, right where my mouse is, that is number 19 and 20, I think. Number of children born to this mother and number of children of this mother now living. If you don't know of any other children, this might be a good guess to look for other records as well. Now, one place I suggest if you're doing U.S. research to look to see what vital records exist is the Red Book. This is an old Ancestry publication. Ancestry used to be a publisher. And so you can now find it on the Roots Web Wiki. Now, you might have a copy of this book or the library might. I just like to use it on the Roots Web Wiki because I like their charts better. So to find it on Roots Web Wiki, go to Roots Web Wiki and then click on Red Book, American State, County, and Town Sources. You'll then search for the state you're interested in, and then you can look at county resources. And so depending on the state, you might see a table like this. Notice it has the county, the county address, you might want to ignore that because this is older, the date the county was formed, and if it was formed from another county. So for example, if it was, if there's a parent county, and then you'll get the parent counties, then you get birth, marriage, death, land, probate, and I can't see because of the box there, court. So this tells you what year those records started for that county. Now, sometimes records for a county started before the state. So that's why knowing when they started for that county is so vital. Now, just because they started at a certain point, like let's say Apache, they started birth in 1887. That doesn't mean that it's 100% complete. Sometimes a state or a county started vital record registration, but they weren't 100% compliant for decades afterwards. So keep that in mind. You could still not find what you're looking for because it just wasn't recorded. Number 3 is baptism. Now, this is a baptism record that basically was written in a little book. There are official baptism records that the church would have given the family. So you might get something like this that was handwritten by the mother or the father, or you might get an actual one. I would actually recommend that you get the one from the church because that should be more accurate. But baptisms, depending on what church it is, when they baptize, all of that will most likely give you her birth date. And so that can be very helpful. Now, if it doesn't give the birth date, you might need to look at, okay, she obviously is alive prior to this date or on this date, and then think about when people are baptized in that church. Some churches have child baptism and some have adult baptism. It also might give her parents' names. Now, number 4 is one that you may not be familiar with, and that is a school census. So what was the purpose of this? Schools, the area, the community did censuses so they could determine how many teachers they needed, how many buildings they needed, and to kind of look at the community that they were serving. Now, school census records, depending on the time and place, look different. Mostly you're going to see these in the late 19th century, early 20th century. But depending on where you're researching, they could have collected different information. So for example, I have a transcribed one from, it's a little after the Civil War era in Texas. And it basically has the name of the parent and it has little tick marks for the ages. This one is from Arizona from 1913. And it not only names the parents or guardians and the child, but it also has where the child was born if they're born outside the United States. So there's a lot more going on with this. Typically, school censuses are looking at children under the age of 21. So you're going to get some of those older kids. So they can be incredibly helpful to you as you try to connect parents and children. So here's the one, here it's blown up, and you can see over at the far right, that's column 8, it says whether they're native born or not. My grandmother was not native born, and so hers actually says Mexico there. And so it lists it out, but you can see it has the number of what their race is. It has what their ages are. So there's a little bit more information there that can be really helpful, especially if you're having trouble finding the birth information. Now, number 5 is yearbooks, and this is a source you're all familiar with, right? Now, yearbooks stem from about the 1800s. I believe it's either Harvard or Yale that had the first yearbooks. Yes, mostly they're college, and then over time they're high school. And then, as you probably know today, you get yearbooks for elementary schools. But these yearbooks are going to have names. They're going to have what the person was involved in. They may have photographs. I have one that was from the World War I era that lists everybody, faculty and students who fought in World War I, and also those who died. So depending on the year, depending on the place, yearbooks can be incredibly valuable. And if you find one, or if you have one where there's writing, that might give you even more information. I know one place I was doing yearbook research where the woman talked about she had a yearbook that the student later in life wrote down the names of all the spouses of the students. And so it really kind of morphed from just being a yearbook to also being a record of marriages. Now, I want to show you something to consider when you're looking at ancestry. So here's Ancestry. Here's a yearbook page from Virginia. I want you to notice where the red arrow is pointing. Do you see that there's that film strip? And you might be familiar with this. When you're looking at records with that film strip, especially something like a yearbook where you would want to see consecutive pages, open that up, because sometimes not all the pages are there. And so you might be, why can't I find this? It might be because it's just not there. So open up that film strip and browse image by image so you can see what's there and what's not. All right, let's go on to marriage. Now, obviously not all women married, but for those who did, there are different types of marriage records. And once again, this depends on time and place. So, for example, there might be marriage bans, marriage bonds, marriage licenses. Throughout time, the government and the church has had an interest in marriages because they want to make sure that first you're legally able to marry, you're not married to someone else, for example, and that you're not closely related. Those are usually the two reasons, and that you are of age to marry. So depending on the time period and place, there's going to be different types of marriage records. Now, once she's married, she might be found in records that have to do with the benefits of marriage. So, for example, maybe she belongs to a group that her husband belongs to, or maybe there's a military or occupation pension. So you're going to want to consider what is he doing in life and what might be connected to her as well. So number 6 is marriage licenses. Now, marriage licenses do exactly what I just talked about. They ascertain and they confirm that you aren't married to someone else currently, that you're of the proper age to marry, and that you can marry. You're not closely related. And so what happens is a marriage license is issued. Then they take that marriage license to whoever's going to marry them. And then the information from the wedding is then placed on the marriage certificate. They go return this to, let's say, a county recorder, and it is recorded. Now, the nice thing about marriage licenses and or marriage certificates, like on this piece of paper here, this record group, it gives you information about the bride and the groom, including how many times they've been married, who their parents are, and any occupations that they may have. Now, once again, time and place. If you're looking at researching, let's say 1700s, early 1800s, there isn't a marriage license. There's most likely a marriage bond or a ban. So you need to look at the area and what would have been common for that time period. Now, the other thing you might want to consider besides that Red Book resource I showed you is to look at the Family Search Research Wiki for the state you're researching and see what it has to say about marriage records and what ones are online. Now, before we go to our next slide, I want you to notice something. And I know this isn't real large for you, but that's okay. We have on one page a marriage license and a certificate of marriage. And so up at the top, the marriage license, it includes signatures by whoever married them. Over on the certificate, you can see that it includes more information about the bride and the groom. This is an official document. This is this is LA County, so Los Angeles County. This is officially from Los Angeles County. Sometimes marriage certificates are not official documents, and often these non-official documents are going to be home sources, or they may be used for other things, but they're not official. So, for example, here is one that we have. Let's see, I was trying to see what the 1876. So this is a certificate, but it wasn't a certificate for the county. It's a certificate that was given most likely by the minister. Sometimes people went ahead and framed these and hung them up. I have some in my collection that I've seen at antique stores and stuff, but they weren't official documents. So if you have something like this, and probably the biggest giveaway is that it's handwritten and sometimes it's very ornate. It'll have pictures of brides and grooms and hands clasping and all of that. You'll want to go ahead and seek out the original certificate that would have been something that the county would have recorded, or if you're in New Orleans, the parish would have recorded. It's kind of like if you've had children and you go to the hospital, you have your child and they give you the cute little birth certificate with the little feet and the little hands. That's not official. It's just something that's decorative. That's kind of like what some of these marriage certificates are that aren't issued by the county. Now, if you want to know more, I believe this is in your handout. This is a special report about marriages and divorces from 1867 to 1906. This is available for free on Google Books. What it does is it goes through the laws of every state and tells you what was required in order to marry. So if it's a marriage license, if there's a certain familial link, like you had to be more than second cousins, for example, it gives you all that information. And then the divorce section gives you information about what you could get a divorce for. Things like adultery, abandonment, that kind of stuff. So it's a real helpful guide to look for the state that you're researching and learn more. Like I said, this is available for free on Google Books. Now, what about military pensions? That's our number 8. Military pensions, if the wife got it for her husband's service, she would have had to prove that she was his wife. And so how do you do that? You do that with a marriage certificate, a page from the family Bible, something that would show they were married. Now, this is a pension for the Confederacy. If you're doing Civil War research, Union pensions would have come from the federal government, and those are available from NARA. Confederate pensions would have come from the state they served. So that does not come from the federal government. The federal government did not pay for those. So here's one of my ancestors from Texas. Her husband actually was murdered after the Civil War, after he served. She gives information about her, Jane S. Chatham, who her husband is, M.H. Chatham. And then towards the bottom, she says she's going to be 60 in November next. She lives in Bell County, Texas. She goes on to say that she is a housekeeper when she's able, but she's not in good physical condition due to rheumatism. And then she says she was married to M.H. Chatham on February 22nd, 1862, Washington County, Texas. Now, in this file, it does not have her marriage certificate. However, there are affidavits from people, including her brother, who talk about her husband's service and that they were married. So military pensions are going to give you that good information. That might even give you a little bit more about the woman herself. Now, along with that, my number 9 is military records. So anytime you have somebody serving in the military, you want to get their records, and then if there's a pension, get the pension. Because the records might include information about the wife. Sometimes, for example, there would have been an insurance payout if the person had died, and so they list who is their beneficiary. In the case of my great grandfather, when he entered the military, he was not married, so he put down his mother. But later he marries. And so his new mother in law actually does an affidavit to explain that he now lives in California, and that's because he was now married. So look at the military record and see what it has to say about other people in the family. Now, a lot of genealogists lament the loss of the 1890 US federal census, and everybody has feelings about that. My feeling is there's other records you use instead of the 1890 census. And yes, it would be great if they were complete for the 1890 census, but that's just the way it goes. However, there is an 1890 veteran schedule. Some of it does not exist, but a lot of it does. So you can look online. National Archives has an article about this, and I've written about this for Genealogy Bank with what is still extant and what is not. If you have an Ancestry subscription, you can find this in the census collection on Ancestry. What's nice about this is this was a census to enumerate everybody who had served in the Civil War, because the idea was that those people would be asking for pensions and they wanted to be able to know who they were, but also when other people couldn't prove their service, but they knew which guys were in their unit, they could contact them. Now, if the person was deceased, the widow's name is included in this enumeration. So if you see a woman, although there were some women who served in the Civil War, most likely it's the widow, and that's going to give you some information. Actually, on this one, I have to get my reading glasses out. Let's see, it is line 6. It says widow of, and it gives the name of her husband. So these records, don't ignore them. They can be really important in finding someone, especially because it gives you some extra information about their Civil War service, such as when they enlisted, when they were discharged, and any kind of disability that they incurred. That's at the bottom. Now, quite frankly, you could, and I've done this before, have a whole talk about newspapers, because newspapers are a source where we see women and what's happening in women's lives. But when we think about marriage, newspapers are going to have, in the 20th century, for the most part, they're going to have information about engagements and weddings. They, prior to that, may have information about anniversaries like 50th and 75th, that kind of thing. They also have surprises, because remember, it's time and place. So this is a little ad put in the paper from 1774, and this is what we call a runaway wife ad. What happened was, because during that time, women were bound to their husbands because of coverture, they they had no legal rights. So if they left their husband would put in an advertisement telling everybody, don't give her credit, don't let her use me as that I'll pay for whatever she buys, because she has left my bed and board. So we see this one says, whereas Catherine, my wife, has without any just cause deserted my bed and board, and has secreted from me a great part of our household furniture, and has doth refuse to return and live with me, I do thereby strictly forbid all and every person to perform harboring her, or in any way entertaining her or crediting her on my account. So he's basically saying, look, she took off and she took the furniture. So if she comes to your establishment and tries to say that I'm going to pay her debts, I'm not doing it. And then at the bottom, it talks about how he was a great husband. So these are ads we see in the 1700s, maybe early 1800s, that we may next see a divorce record. So it's something that husbands would have put in the paper, stopping other people from housing their wives who have left them and charging on their account. Now, number 12 is divorce. Now, I gave you the runaway wife ad, and now we're going to do divorce. Yes, time and place is important for divorce because obviously divorce laws change over time and place. But people have always hated their spouse. So, what that means is they may have just taken off or they may have gotten a divorce. This is a divorce from San Bernardino County. It's from the 1800s. And why I want to show you this little piece of it, it's the later 1800s because it's typed. It says, wherefore plaintiff prays that said marriage be dissolved, that her maiden name be changed to Minnie M. Perry, and that she have the custody of her children. So what she's asking the court is for the divorce and for her to retain her maiden name and to have her children. And so that would explain a name change in the records. So if we know her maiden name, we always need to search by her maiden name and her married name because things change. Number 13 is something that we could actually put in childhood as well, and that is bastardy bonds. People, well, here's the big secret. People have always had children out of wedlock. I know that's very surprising, but it's true. And historically, people have, women have been under coverture. Their husbands are responsible for them. If they don't have a husband, their father is. And so when she becomes pregnant, somebody has to be financially in charge of that child. And so they're looking for the father. Now, this is a larger discussion, but during this early time period, the 1700s, maybe early, well, this one's from 1877, they're looking for someone to be financially responsible, and that is whoever is the father. And so he is putting, hopefully, a bond saying he will be responsible, that the county won't be, because the county or the city doesn't want to be responsible. They don't want to have to pay out for this child. So they want the father. So this is a bond saying that, yes, I will be responsible. And so it says the woman's name, the mother's name, Adelaide Pettifoot, and the father's name is Wesley Bivens. And so that's what that is. So this is one from North Carolina. I believe Family Search has these and North Carolina Archives have these. This is not something you would see in every state, but if you're doing research in this kind of 1700s, 1800s time period, you might want to take a look at that. Obviously, not everybody got married before they had a child, and I haven't researched this couple. They may have never married. He might have just been financially responsible. But most likely they probably did get married. Now, number 14 is going to be different for everybody. And that is heirlooms or home sources. You know, we need to look very carefully at our heirlooms to make sure that they don't have some genealogical information for us. And so I like to use this as an example. I actually wrote an article about this as well. This is a hand-painted china bowl that was gifted to my great-grandmother from her friend who painted china. So that's what it looks like. When we turn it over, it says to Mary and Oscar Philibert, December 27th, 1971, for your golden anniversary. So that's the 50th wedding anniversary. And then it says that they were married December 27th, 1921, and it gives the name of the woman and her husband that gave it to her. So this is telling us when they were married. Now, is this an original marriage source? No. But if we didn't know when they were married, this is a good clue. So look at your home sources, look at your heirlooms and artifacts that you have inherited, and make sure you really study them, because they may tell you more than you really assumed they did. All right, now let's go to life. What kinds of records do we see that have to do with life? What was she involved in? You want to ask yourself What groups was she involved in? What church did she go to? Where did her kids go to school? Who's in her fan club? Now, fan club stands for friends, associates, and neighbors. It's through those people that we find information about our female ancestors, and those records typically are in archives. And then what's in that locality? What records exist that can help us? Well, there might be a state census. Not every state took a state census, and those that did usually did it on the '05 year. Uh, so in between federal censuses, sometimes they can give better information than the federal census because sometimes they give information, for example, on the parents' names. So look to see if the state that you're researching in did a state census. Some of these are available on Family Search and Ancestry. Women are recorded in the activities they took part in. And so one activity they did was make quilts. Now, there is a website called the Quilt Index, and this is a database of quilts and women. And yes, there are men who make quilts, but this is largely women. Now, these quilts include the names of the makers, but in the case of signature quilts or friendship quilts where there's multiple names, it includes those names. So it's a great place to look. Previously, it was quilts at major repositories in the US like DAR and the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. But now they're inviting everybody to upload their quilts. And it's free. Number 17 is community cookbooks. So once again, what is she involved in? Community cookbooks have been around since the time of the US Civil War. They're created to raise funds for a cause, whether that's the kids' school or church or helping soldiers. And so they typically have recipes and the names of women. This gives you, like a directory, a city directory, a time, a place, and a name. So looking to see what community cookbooks exist in that place can be incredibly helpful. Now, one thing we tend not to think about with women is voter records, because we think, okay, well, women got the right to vote in 1920 with the passage of the 19th Amendment. Well, yes and no. So in California, women have had the right to vote since 1911. Those voting records are on Ancestry. They have them from the California State Archives. Some states, especially in the West, had women voting later. And once again, this is a larger topic. If you're researching a place you don't know when women voted, then just Google the name of the state and women's suffrage, and it'll tell you. There's going to be a Wikipedia article about it. So voting records can have names, addresses, and political party affiliation. And for those of you doing California research, Ancestry has them. So for California, so it's a great resource. I should say, don't assume because she's not on the records that she's dead, for example. It could be that she didn't vote. Some women didn't believe in the right to vote, so she may not have. Or in the early years of voting, she may not have because she married a man who was not a U.S. citizen. And until 1922, if you did that, you lost your citizenship. So that might be a reason as well. So don't make assumptions. So here's a blow up of that one I just showed from LA County. And you can see it has the name. It has, sometimes it has what they did. So a lot of the women, it says housewife. And then it has the street and then their political affiliation. Now, we all know that the sure things in life are death and taxes. So number 19 is taxes. Now, I understand that you mostly are going to see men in these records, but if she's a widow or she's single, you're going to see her. So for example, my ancestor, I showed you her pension file. Her husband died when she still had young children. So she was a widow for decades. Well, she paid taxes. And so she's in the yellow line down there, Jane S. Chatham, and it has information about what she's paying taxes on, the value, how many acres, how many cattle, all of that. So I can use this to write up a narrative about her life and to learn a little bit more about her. I can add things like the census and agricultural schedules and all of that to broaden my knowledge of her life. Don't forget about the importance of lineage applications. There have been lineage societies. Well, a lot of them came into being in the 1890s. There was a lot of patriotism during that time period. So you get DAR, you get colonial dames, you get all kinds of lineage societies. So those have genealogy information. Now, as we know, sometimes that information isn't correct, but it still can be a good place to look. Now, DAR, you can go to their website and you can look up various information from applications. This is the SAR, the Sons of the American Revolution membership applications from 1889 to 1970. Now, what you would do is you would put the name of a person. You don't have to know that they were a member of the SAR because this is indexed by every person named in the lineage application. And that's going to be the patriot. That's going to be everybody who descended from that patriot and the person who was asking for membership. So this is an ancestry database. And I don't know if it's 100% complete, but I'm assuming it's fairly complete. So look at lineage applications when you can to get an idea of what a lineage is, what names are there that maybe you hadn't considered, and information. This is what it looks like, or part of what it looks like. This isn't the whole thing, but you see on the left, it has the name of the person who wants to join, and then below that has all the names of the people down to the patriot. And then on the right, they're providing more information, including the fact that they're using DAR records to apply. Now, number 21 is similar. It's membership records. Our ancestors like to join groups. They joined fraternal orders, they joined lineage societies, they joined all kinds of groups, benevolent groups. So if you do archival research and look at the place, you can get an idea of what groups existed that they may have joined. Now, this is a sample from a record actually that I own, that I purchased, that will one day be donated from the Order of Eastern Star in Maine. And you can see that it shows the officers who were attending, it shows the members that were attending, and then the visitors who were attending. So there's lots of great information in membership records. So you'll want to go to a place like Archive Grid to do a search and to find what records might exist. And then you're going to have to look at the records to see if your person was a member, unless you already know they were a member. Now, we often think women didn't work, and that may or may not be true. Women of color, single women, widows, impoverished women, women whose husbands didn't work, had to work. And so there might be occupational records of all kinds that give you information. Now, this little card here is from the deceased physician file from the AMA, the American Medical Association. I believe these are both available on Ancestry and Family Search. They look like a card. Oh, sorry. They look like a card, and they have the name of the physician and information about them, maybe an obit. So like this one, Mary Hadley Smith, she dies in Long Beach in 1941, and they have a little snippet that must be from her obit in the newspaper. So this is a great resource for women who were physicians, early physicians, and that includes, I think, osteopaths as well. Okay. This is a database in Ancestry that I love, and I always like to talk about it. It's called the U.S. Craft Person Files from 1600 to 1995. It's basically a file that a museum has put together that they've indexed various sources, and that include names and work that they did, mostly craft type work like silversmithing, fractors, goldsmithing, jewelry, upholstery, that kind of stuff. So you can see this one says Mary Woodworth, Boston, Mass. She's an upholsteress, and then her home's at 5 Canton Street, Court. And then it doesn't have the source. Most of these do, so that you can go ahead and take a look at the source. This is a database that goes back to 1600, and it includes women. So it's a great source to check out. Some of the cards have more information than others. So this one has a good bit of information, but there's some cards that have even more. All right, let's round out our discussion by talking about old age and death. Now, poverty, especially poverty and old age, can leave records, things like pensions, for example. And obviously, death creates all kinds of records. So always think about the time period, the place, and the different parts of her life and what records might exist. Now, there's funeral home records, but unfortunately, funeral homes are something that kind of pop up in the American Civil War era. So they don't have a long history. Now, these records are considered private for the most part, and some of those early funeral homes were bought out by big organizations. So these records may or may not still exist. I know San Francisco, the genealogy group in San Francisco, I can't think of what it's called now. Is it SF Genealogy, maybe? They have a bunch of funeral home records, but sometimes they are destroyed. Sometimes they're in weird places. So they may be at the funeral home, or they may be in an archive. But the nice thing about funeral home records, when they do exist, is it does give you information about the death. It gives you information about the family, and it might give you information about birth. But remember, it matters who the informant is. It may or may not be correct. Now, this is for one of my female ancestors. Her name actually was Melinda, but she was known as Lenny, and her last name, the surname from her second husband, is Bean. She was living in Salem, Oregon, in the state hospital. This was during World War II. She probably had some dementia, and her family couldn't take care of her. They also couldn't come to the funeral because of gas rationing. So this information was probably procured over the telephone from one of her kids, her adult children. And you can see at the bottom, there's a payment. It's actually made by one of her daughters. They have a birthplace, but they don't have any information about her parents' names. And then they have a date of death and a date of birth. So they have as much information as they probably got from the state hospital and one of her children. Now, if we're going to talk about funeral records, let's talk about grave markers. Grave markers can have additional information, including emblems of membership groups that the person belonged to. It might give parents' names. It might give a maiden name. This one I'm showing, I know is hard to read, but it is for a man. But notice at the top, there's a woman who's under a weeping willow tree, and next to an urn, she's kind of got her hand like this. Obviously, she's mourning. It doesn't talk about his wife, but underneath there's a poem, and it talks about his dear Annie. And so that's how we learned that he had a wife. So we need to pay special attention to grave markers and see what they have and what symbols that they show. And then obviously death certificates. Now, just like birth certificates, death certificates have not always been available. So it's time and place. And even if a place started fairly early, they may not be 100% compliant. So the nice thing about death certificates is they can give information about a person's parents. However, which would give a maiden name, it matters who the informant is. The informant may not know that information. They may have never met. If it's a child, they may never have met their grandparents. They may have no idea. So you want to look at this, but you want to compare it to other sources and not just assume that everything is correct. There are cemetery records. Here's Lenny Bean. This is the cemetery record for the memorial park that she is buried in. She is not buried with family. Like I said, it was during the World War II. She's not living where her family lives. She's in a state hospital. And she is just buried in a line of other burials, so not by family or anything. So the cemetery record is pretty plain. It says her name and where the location is of her headstone. And it says Melinda at the top because I gave them that name. So they wrote it in and then gave me a copy. Now, obituaries are important for all kinds of reasons, but if you're trying to look for a woman's maiden name, remember that through her married name, you might find her maiden name. So, for example, if we are searching her married name, we might find her parents or her siblings, especially her brothers, obituaries. So, for example, look at this top obituary. This comes from the Sacramento newspapers. I have family that are from Sacramento. And this is for Joseph Chatham. So at the top, it talks about that he died. He lived in Mills, and he died at the Sacramento Hospital of Heart Disease. And that he's going to be buried in the city cemetery, so Sacramento City Cemetery. In the middle, it says he's a native of Texas. He's retired railroad. He's lived in Sacramento County 10 years. Then is the survivors list. His wife, Bertha, so she has no surname in this. So searching Bertha Chatham would not find this obit. And then his children, starting with his daughters, Mrs. Bessie Hammond, Mrs. Lillian Flemmer, Mrs. Mary Philibert, and then his sons. Those are their married names. So if I didn't know their maiden name, now I do, because this is their father. So their maiden name is Chatham. When we search for women, we need to search by their husband's names, but also their name with their married surname to see if we can find instances where we find the larger family group that includes their maiden names. So don't automatically assume because you don't know the maiden name that all is lost. Sometimes looking for the married name is going to help you. 28 is probate and wills. Sometimes people have them, sometimes they don't, but sometimes it's needed, especially if she outlives her husband. She might have stuff and bills, and so there might be a probate action, even if there's not a wills action. If her husband dies, she may have to be granted guardianship of her children, depending on the time period. So you want to look in probate and wills for her husband and also for her. She might also inherit from her parents, for example. The problem with probate and wills is, yes, there are some on Family Search and Ancestry, but many of them are going to be at the courthouse or the courthouse archives. And then we're down to our last two. 29 is local histories. So make sure that you look into local histories and see if you can find either mention of her husband or family, or just what is in that community. What are the churches? What are the groups? That way you can look and see if you can find records for those. And then finally, number 30. And I put lots of big question marks. And the reason is to say there's all kinds of stuff, but it matters time and place. And the records you need have to do with that time and place. So make sure you exhaust the time and place that you're researching and look to see if you can find her. The way I suggest this is to go to familysearch.org, click on search at the top, and then catalog, and then start with the state, California. Then go through all the subjects for California and see what records exist that might be helpful. Then go back to the catalog and put in the county and the state. Go through all those records. And then the city or town, county, and state. Now, in California, we don't have a lot of city records, but if you're doing New England, they have a lot of town records. but you want to exhaust that to see what's available. You exhaust Family Search because it's free. And that's going to take a while to exhaust that. And then you can do the same thing with Ancestry. Go to Ancestry, click at the top where it says search, and then click on card catalog and go through the card catalog for that time and place and see what exists that might be helpful for what you're researching. Always ask a research question and think to yourself, what might answer that question? And obviously, librarians are helpful for that. Now, just so you know, you should be researching in places other than Family Search and Archives or Family Search and Ancestry. You should be researching in libraries and archives. And libraries include government libraries like the California State Library and Library of Congress, state libraries, academic libraries, society libraries, public libraries like the one we're benefiting from right now, and then genealogy libraries like Family Search Library in Salt Lake, the Midwest Genealogy Center in Missouri, the Clayton in Texas, Allen County Public Library in Indiana, and the Godfrey in Connecticut. All of these places have online catalogs. So take time to go through those and always search by the place that you're researching, not by the name. Databases on Ancestry and Family Search are indexed by name. Library catalogs, unless they are the author or the title has to do with their name, that's not going to be there. You need to search by place. And just like there's different kinds of libraries, there's different kinds of archives. And those include government archives. I mentioned California State Archive. Not all states have a state archive. Some of them have a combined state library, state archive, state historical society, but there's also NARA. There's corporate archives, academic archives, historical societies have archives, museums have archives, and religious institutions have archives. So point being, get a notebook, start writing down your questions and what records you need, what you can find online versus what is not online, and start looking to see what is out there that can help you learn more about her life. All right, so that is 30 documents or 30 records that document female ancestors. What questions do you have for me? You're muted, Dave. There you
Okay,
go.
there we go. All right. Okay, well, that was very interesting. A lot of great information there. We have some questions already. Let's go back and start with them from the beginning.
Okay.
Let's see. Where do you find the school census?
So they do have some on Ancestry and Family Search. If you're on Ancestry, go to the card catalog and put in school census and the keywords to see. I don't know what states they have them for. I know they have Arizona, but I don't know beyond that. Family Search, do a place search, probably on the county, and then look under, it's probably under the category census or schools. Beyond that, you may have to look at a state archive.
Very good. Let's see. These others got answered along the way. What about information from mental institutions or state hospitals?
So here's the problem with asylums. In fact, I told you, Lenny Bean, Melinda, she was in a state hospital. So sometimes state hospitals, especially if they continue to be a state hospital or a mental health facility today, they claim HIPAA rights and they won't show you anything. Now, so what that would mean is you need to look at what is available via the court, because old court records include people who are institutionalized, or the state archive. Now, in Oregon, where Lenny was, the admitting records for the asylum were at the state archives. They don't give a lot of information, but they at least give when she entered and why. So courts, state archives. Beyond that, what I recommend is looking at things like yearly reports. Asylums had to do yearly reports, and a lot of those are on Google Books or one of the other digitized book websites. So, meaning that you're not going to get individual name kinds of information, but you're at least going to give some historical context. If she was at an asylum during a census year, then she would be enumerated in the asylum.
I'd like to add that one of our previous speakers, Madeline Yanoff, gave a really good presentation on this subject. And it is on our YouTube channel. It is still there. It was called Finding Missing Ancestors in Institutional Records, Part 1, Hospitals, Sanitariums, and Asylums.
Perfect.
Yeah, that was from
Perfect.
2022, July 23rd. You can find it there on our YouTube channel. If you want the handout, go ahead and email me at contact@saclibrary.org, and I'll be glad to send it to you.
All right, wonderful.
Let's see what other questions do
While,
we have.
while you're looking for the other questions, can I also say there's two really
Absolutely.
good books on researching women in asylums. One is by Steve Luxembourg, and it's called Annie's Ghosts. And so Ghosts. That's about him doing research on his aunt who he did not know existed and who lived her life in an asylum. The other is called The Woman They Could Not Silence, and that's a newer book. It's by Kate Moore, and it is about a woman whose husband institutionalized her. She eventually does get out, and she wrote a book about it. That's from the 1800s. The one by Steve Luxembourg is 20th century.
Great. Those sound great. Let's see. We had someone had their hand up. But it looks like it's down now. You are able to unmute yourselves now to ask questions directly with your own voice if you'd like. Let's see. We have a comment from Betsy. Another source is adoption records. If it's a private adoption, it's likely the birth mother's name is on it.
Yeah, and obviously, once again, it's time and place, right? It matters if the state's a closed state. So yeah, that might be something that is available. I know for one person that I did research who was adopted, we wrote to the Catholic Church where they were baptized, and they forwarded our letter to the New York Family and Hospital because they actually were part of the orphan train. And so that's how we were able to get some information. So, just if you don't know what is available adoption wise, there's a lot of websites online that talk about doing that research.
All right, here's a request from Catherine John. Can you put up the library slide again?
Yeah, I sure can. And you know what? Feel free to take a picture of this. And what I'll do is let me put up the library, and then I'll put up, oh, hold on. That didn't work very well, did it? Okay. I'll do the library, and then what is, okay. This might be operator error, obviously. All right, there we go. There's the libraries. And then I'll put up the archives so you can do that. So feel free to take a screenshot of this. All right, and let me switch to archives. All right.
Okay, and then Judy is asking, where was the U.S. craft persons file?
It's on Ancestry. It's on
Ah.
Ancestry. And so go to the card catalog. So go up to search and then card catalog. And in the keyword, put craft person. and it'll come up. Now, it is from a database from a museum, and that information is on the Ancestry page for this database. You can go to the museum's website, and I think it's more updated on the museum's website.
All right, great. That's one I wondered about also. Let's see. Someone had their hand up and I've forgotten who it was.
Is it Donna?
Yes, I think it was Donna. Donna, do you have a question?
You have to
Okay.
unmute.
Mhm.
Maybe not.
Okay, well, maybe someone else has a question in the meantime. Oh,
Oh,
she says,
it won't let her.
I'm sorry, you know something? There we go. My bad. Now you can unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Oh, goody. Well, this is a little bit, well, two things. I have my great-great-grandmother had they were twins, and I only find them at age 12 they were in New Jersey. I find them together on a census in the 1860, I think. And then after that, they're never together, and we've never been able to figure out who their parents were. I did find a death certificate for my great-great-grandmother, and it gave two names, but I don't really know that they're accurate, and I'm just wondering, I don't know, I'm kind of lost as to what to look at next. So can you give me
Okay.
some?
So in 1860, they're 12.
Yes.
Okay, so they should be in the 1850 census, which is an every name census.
They don't show up on it.
They don't. Okay.
Mm-mm.
If what I would suggest though is wherever they are in 1860, I would go and either try a different website with the census. You know, it's on Ancestry, it's on Family Search, it's on GenealogyBank, it's on MyHeritage, it's everywhere.
Mhm.
Or in 1850, go to the place they're living in 1860, use that little, if you're on Ancestry, use that little film strip and go page by page and see if you can find it. It could be mistranscribed. So that's what I would do.
Okay.
Now, the other thing is, and you can't, well, by 1870, they could be married. So that's probably why you don't find them.
They would have been really young. They were born in 1849.
Well, you said they're 12 in 1860, 1870, right? 1870, they're 22.
Okay, yeah, they could have been.
So they could have been married.
Yeah.
So that might be the problem there. So I would focus on that place, and I think you said New Jersey.
Yeah.
Go to the Family Search catalog, go and look up the county records and the town records and see what else is for that time period. You know, children aren't going to leave many records.
Mhm.
So that's part of the problem. But really, I would look at what records exist, and then I would probably go page by page in the census. You know, you can look at 1860, see who's living by them,
Mhm.
and then look in 1850 for those people and see if they're living by them then.
Okay, that's a good idea. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have another one that's a little bit off, but I have my my mother's doll. It's a really big doll with you know, where the elbows and the knees bend and everything, and
Wow.
it's over 100 years old.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with it because I don't trust that if I gave it to my granddaughter, she would really even care. And there's nobody else had girls. And I've contacted the New Jersey genealogy library to see if they have a place, you know, where they would want it. They would want to put it on display or anything. I got no answer, and I was just wondering what to do with something like that.
There's a few things you could do. I mean, you could keep trying to find a museum that would be interested in it. There might be a museum of toys or dolls or something like that. that might be, outside of New Jersey that might be interested.
Hmm.
The other thing is what you could do if you figure, okay, I don't think my grandchild's going to want this or whatever, but you want to tell the story.
Mhm.
I would take photos of it and share your memories with it. You can either do that just by writing it out and attaching the photos, or there's a company called Artifacts. It's Artifact without the second A. It's ARTIFCTS, I think. And that's what they do is you take photos and you talk about the item. You're artifacting it basically and making it searchable for your family. So
Okay.
that's another option. But yeah, unfortunately, I think a lot of us face that.
Yeah, I just feel like when I die, it's,
Mhm.
I mean, my cousin may take it, but it's not really her line of the family. So, but
Well,
it is, but it isn't.
and what I would suggest is you make those you start asking those questions before you die,
Yeah.
because the problem is after you pass, people may not realize that it has some importance and it might end up at the Goodwill.
Oh God, I'd hate that.
Yeah, so start making those inquiries now and start documenting your items so that when you pass, they can find that and they can, know what your wishes were.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Here's a follow-up to the question about the craftsperson list. What is the name of the museum that has a craftsperson list?
Okay, so I'm afraid I'm going to mispronounce this, so bear with me. It is the Winterthur Museum. I think it's either in Delaware or Rhode Island or somewhere over there. They are a material culture kind of museum. They have all kinds of household stuff, and they have a lot of really great stuff. So I think it's spelled Winterthur.
Gena, that's in Delaware,
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Joyce.
and it's a very famous museum. It should be
Yes.
very easy to find.
Well, and you could just Google it. And I'm pretty sure, because I saw it a while back, that database is on their museum website as well. It's different. It looks a little different than it does on Ancestry. So you might want to try both.
And Winterthur is possibly a place for that doll book.
Yeah, that doll might be a good place to check with them.
Yeah, they are local to New Jersey. I mean, they're Delaware. They're just
That's a good point.
distance down the road. So yeah.
And that's what they specialize in, is all kinds of material culture like that. So yeah.
And they are a wonderful, wonderful museum.
Yeah.
And what's the museum called?
Winterthur, Winterthur.
And it's
So-
in Delaware.
So just Google it and you'll see it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joyce.
Okay, here's a question from Sharon Mahoney. Would there be any record of a child going into foster care in 1930s Bay Area, California? He was never officially adopted. Is there a list of orphan homes?
I don't know. So what I would do is go to sfgenealogy.com, I think it's .com, and see if they have anything about orphanages, because they have all kinds of San Francisco genealogy. The other place I would ask is the library at California Ancestors, the California State Genealogy Association. I would ask them because I'm not sure, to be honest.
And there is another great presentation from Madeline Yanoff, Finding Missing Ancestors in Institutional Records, Part 2, Poorhouses, Orphanages, and Prisons. That's from September 24th, 2022. That is also on our YouTube channel.
There you go. Just listen to Madeline. She's
Listen to Madeline.
She's done that.
And email me at contact@saclibrary.org if you want the handout. Yeah. She's done a lot of great presentations.
Yeah,
for us.
she has. She's wonderful.
So, here's one from Joyce Smith. It looks like more of a comment accolade. Gena, love the reference to the quilt index. Way to go. Hope to see you again. San Diego I have this thing that keeps popping up that blocks part of it.
AQSG.
Yeah, very
Oh,
completely
yes.
interesting. All right. Here's
Yes.
direct from Joyce.
Yeah, because I'm a member of the American Quilt Study Group. So yeah, I've got to talk about the Quilt Index.
Absolutely.
And another accolade from Sandy Gardner. Excellent presentation. A lot to think about and apply. Yeah, there's a lot of good information there. Okay, any more questions? Well, while we're waiting for a possible additional question, I just want to get my shameless plug in for next month, June 22nd, 2024. We were going to have John Edmondson speaking on the genealogy resources at the Sacramento Family Search Center. That's a great resource. You can learn about this incredible local resource. You can get help from them, take classes, and search their digital library. They can help you get started with a lot of things.
Dave, I have a comment.
Sure, Ann.
For San Francisco and the Bay Area research, their library does an excellent job, and they have webinars and that sort of thing, and they're very good about knowing who to go to or who to send you to. So I just wanted to comment on that, because I think, sometimes libraries are overlooked, which is not a good idea, because they have a lot of information sometimes. So anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for that comment.
I have a question. You at the very beginning, you mentioned something about Cindy's list, and I didn't catch what that was.
So Cindy's list is a finding aid of various websites. It's been around for decades.
Oh.
So it's Cindy, CYNDI.
Oh, I hate it when people do that.
So it's not spelled like you think it is.
Okay.
And so what you can do when you go to Cindy's list is, let's say you choose, for example, the United States. Then you can choose a state like California, and then it'll show you different websites for that. You can look up, organizations. You can basically look up anything that has to do with genealogy, and she has websites to help you. So it's a great place to go if you're not sure about a topic.
And then the other question I had is, there's a lady here in Sacramento that offers to take people down to the downtown library in Sacramento. Well, I'm from the East Coast. All of my relatives were, ancestors from the East Coast. Am I going to find anything in the Sacramento library that I haven't found on Ancestry and some of the other websites?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Yeah.
You ought to at least look, Donna, because that, sometimes people donate books from the East Coast. You just don't know what you're going to find. So check it out.
All right.
We do have a pretty large genealogy collection that does include a lot of things that do relate to the East Coast. So you definitely might find something.
All right. Thank you.
I mean, a lot of our stuff is more focused on our local area, the Sacramento room in particular. And we do have some great things of interest to genealogists. We have a really good yearbook collection. So that's a great place for local yearbooks. We also have some manuscript collections that cover local women's groups and clubs.
Okay.
There was one in particular I worked on, the Exchangettes, Women's Auxiliary of the Exchange Club, the Sacramento Exchange Club. They have a couple of very interesting scrapbooks.
Okay.
Donna, they also have their collection online. So you might check on the computer before you go down there and see if they have anything that might pertain.
Under the Sacramento Public Library, you mean?
Yes,
No,
most of the items in our catalog.
Well, that one, Dave, yeah. But the Genealogical Society Library has their collection online.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I see there's a link posted to Cindy's list.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Let's see what Andy I.
Any more questions? Yeah, the Root Cellar Library in the state archives. Our genealogy collection was actually donated by the Genealogical Association of Sacramento, so it's mostly from them. And some more appreciation from people. Here's a long one from Lisa Henderson. Big thanks. Thank you so much, Gena. This was very helpful and fun. I remember you from our Davis Genealogy Club talk years ago. I made your Kentucky rabbit recipe from your bookmark, but it was very heavy in celery seeds. Could it be a typo? My ancestors were there near Lexington, so I was happy to find a heritage recipe to try, not having inherited any of my own. Also found an ancestors quilt in a quilt show book in Florida that I bought.
Ah,
Love seeing family quilts. Thanks again, Lisa.
oh, thank you, Lisa. I don't know. The celery seed question is a good one. I'm not sure, but thank you.
Okay, I'm going to, while people are considering like a last question, I'm going to go ahead and post our handout once again for anyone who missed it. And I will also post the URL of our YouTube channel. There's the handout. And there is the URL of our YouTube channel and the email where you can contact us.
Dave, I'd like to put in a plug for going and looking at local libraries and historical societies on site if you can manage it. I have found some gems by doing that, and it can be a waste of time, but I had a serendipitous day, and by going there I was sent to the local barber who told me where the old house was, etc., and found the graves and got pictures before the house was let go to rack and ruin because it's New Jersey and they are keeping the land but not the houses, which were built in 1775, documented. So it was a very upsetting but a wonderful serendipitous day because I went to the local historical society.
So you went to New Jersey?
And this was in New Jersey, yes.
What part?
New Egypt, New Jersey. I think that's Monmouth County.
That's where I was born.
Oh, really?
Yeah, maybe we're related.
And who are you?
I'm Donna Sterla. My ancestors were Leahy and Stiff in that part of the area, and Sterla.
Well, these were Shins.
Yeah, I don't no, we're probably not.
And I have a quilt that was made in 1841 to 42, and a signature album quilt, which is why I've been searching New Jersey. And I still haven't found 1840 or earlier deaths, childbirth deaths, which I am dying to find. And the Monmouth County Library has been quite helpful.
Oh, thank you.
So there was a question for me about whether we have an agenda for speakers after June. We do. We have them scheduled all the way through December, and that's on our the genealogy page on our website. I also do have a flyer that I can email to people. Just go ahead and request it through contact@saclibrary.org. So yeah, we have a great lineup for the rest of the year. Let's see. So Gena, I'm going to go ahead and send you a transcript of our chat so you get all the nice comments.
Wonderful.
Do we have one last question for Gena?
No, but I would like to know how to contact Deborah, if she will go through you or put it in the chat quickly. So I can contact the New Jersey, New Egypt, New Jersey person.
I think her name's Donna.
Donna? Okay,
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
thank you.
Oops. No, everybody's got my phone number, but that's all right. You can call me.
Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate that you spent your Saturday with me. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, and I hope to see you next month on June 22nd.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.